Hey guys, Dana Giacovello here, founder of Bullies Keep Out and host of La Bella Vita. Today I am here with actress and new BKO advocate, Brooke Nevin.
Hello.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your hectic schedule to be here with me today.
Well, I'm so glad to be here. I know it's been hectic for us to find the time, but we did it. So I'm excited to be here speaking with you.
Yes, I am too. Yeah, sometimes you play that back and forth game for a little while. I have to cancel. Good, well, I have to cancel too. But I know your schedules are crazy. I deal with them all the time where, I completely understand and my schedule's hectic and I'm not an actress. So
Well, exactly. And I know you do a lot of work on the side of all sorts of things. So it's great that we're here together.
yeah, eventually we connect. It happens. So I'm going to start with, one of the most basic questions that most people are used to by now with my interviews. Let's talk a little bit about. Obviously, it's an important cause. So saying why is bullying is an important cause to you is stating the obvious. But let's state it like this. Have you ever experienced any form of bullying or hate online, offline, at any age throughout your life? Someone you know, maybe. Um, and when I say any form, like I said, I always discuss how much we advocate for and the different forms of bullying that there are, and it's not just, limited to online or schoolyard bullying. So is there
Right.
any specific reason that it's special to you, or have you endured anything in such a way?
Well, for me, becoming an advocate for BKO is sort of on a micro and macro level. I think that one of the biggest dangers of bullying is it attempts to silence the people who they're targeting. There's a level of control or a level of like making a victim feel like they're to blame or that there's something shameful about who they are. And I think that in itself is so corrosive on such an individual scale, but then even larger than that when it comes to like a whole part of the population, whether it's an LGBT community or people that are disabled or dealing with all sorts of things. So that's sort of like my macro level wanting to be a part of an organization that can help a large part of the population stand up uh, for and against, stand up for hope and love, and against people that would would like to make it harder to do that. And then on a micro level, I have been a victim of bullying both when I was younger in school and then as an adult in workplace situations. And each time they've been the type of situations where it can be so disorientating to be the target of someone who bullies. And when you're in it, it feels like such a strange distortion of reality. And it kind of can be very isolating. And I think it's very important for people to know that they're not alone and that it happens when you least expect it. And that there's a number of things that we can do to maybe make ourselves less vulnerable. And sometimes that's even in our own mindset. I think there's a lot of resilience that can be mined from going through a situation like that and then reframing what's happened because, of course, hindsight's everything. But there are sometimes positives to be mined by otherwise very stressful and difficult circumstances.
No, absolutely, I agree. And it's funny that you mentioned, hope and love because BKO is kind of based on hope and love. And, you know, those are like two major parts of our foundation. So I love that you brought that up. And I do have to imagine that in the business that you're in, and I see it all the time, even on social media, I can imagine behind closed doors, there is
Yeah,
a great deal of like, judgment and bullying and,
absolutely.
be a certain
I
way.
Well, and I started my career in front of the camera when I was 13. So that's a really kind of young, vulnerable period to start being visible as you're growing up and playing characters on TV, which in itself becomes a target for judgment or sometimes, cyberbullying. And when I was a teenager on this Nickelodeon show called Animorphs, I had a blast. And there were some hurtful comments that were made throughout the duration of filming and when the show aired. And I just had to take it with a grain of salt. And luckily, having been through some other bullying circumstances, I think it was a little easier for me, especially with somebody who's nameless, with just a comment online, to try and take what they were saying with a grain of salt and know that the sum total of who I was and what I was doing and all of that was so much more important than one small opinion in print on a computer screen.
Right. No, yeah, people, sadly, they can be very cruel and judgmental, and not even for any particular reason, and even the sadder thing is it's people that don't know you. Not that it's okay for people that know you to judge you, but they can give you, like, constructive criticism without bullying,
Right.
But sometimes they do bully.
I kind of had this image, because I was thinking a lot about the idea of bullying and what it is, and this image popped up in mind because, I feel like what bullying is someone who is most likely hurting themselves and is forcing you to look into a mirror that they're holding up. But it's a mirror that's been distorted by their own negativity.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're telling you somehow that broken image is the truest version of yourself.
Oh, yeah, that's a very enlightening way to see it, because, normally when we think of bullying, we have all these, technical definitions, and, people come to me all the time and they're like, well, what exactly is bullying and shaming and this and that? And I'm like, well, there's so many forms of it, and it's called different things, self-bullying, like addiction, you're self-bullying, it's just like, it's anything. There's just, like, mental health. Okay, when you have depression and anxiety, you beat yourself up a lot. Again, self-bullying. There's so many forms, and even sometimes when say you're an addict, you bully other people because you're an addict. So there's so many different forms of bullying. They just have different names. Forms of abuse is a form of bullying, but of course it's on a different level, like, child abuse, domestic violence of any kind.
My goodness, I mean, bullying from the smallest schoolyard shove goes all the way up to, human trafficking. So when we think about bullying, I mean, it exists on such a scale of, the idea of taking power away from another individual with the intent to hurt them.
Exactly, and that's why we have such a we've been asked, why do you have such a widespread, like, you advocate for so many things? I'm like, because when you think about it, I don't want to just limit myself to this, okay, this is cyberbullying. Okay, there's so many wonderful organizations out there, so, like,
and it's pervasive
want to cover.
Because, of course, cyberbullying in this arena, that somebody who's cyberbullying isn't necessarily doing that in just that circumstance. It's probably a type of communication or way of relating to people that kind of leads into a lot of areas of their lives. So I think in many ways the best. It's very multifaceted, but in terms of, like, dealing with bullying on a scale that's the most prescriptive in a way is to not only deal with bullies in that you need to create environments where people feel heard and can feel safe and share their stories, but you also need to make sure that people who are more characteristic of becoming a victim of bullying maybe learn the types of skills where they're able to deal with traumatic events and not keep replaying that ticker tape of helplessness in their minds, so that they can become more empowered to maybe help other people, or to realize that they have within them the power to reframe an experience and to move forward in a way that is hopefully more helpful and more positive.
Absolutely. I completely agree with everything you said, and it's the truth. And you put some very lovely twists on a lot of the things that, like I said, that's why I love to do these, because everybody has a different way of looking at it. But I mean, in the end, it all means the same thing. It's all the
Right.
same definition. It's just said in different ways and in different perspectives. But like people, let's jump to victims for a second, and then I'm gonna bring up a topic of online, because we recently have had some run-ins with getting attacked for things. And people have this. It's very fine line between opinions and judgment, and
Hmm.
stating how you feel with respect and kindness and having a conversation. And right away, people jump now. Oh, you're bullying. Oh, you're shaming. Oh, you're doing this, and it's like, no, you're not. I mean, you really have to really educate on what it really is, because saying one thing and just stating your opinion, and as long as you're not bashing and hateful and
Right.
whatnot, you know it's almost like people are fighting. They think they're fighting for causes, but they're not really sure, because they're actually doing the bullying themselves. For instance, I'll give you an example. Obviously, there's a lot of controversial things going on right now, especially with
Yes.
shaming. Even, we see it all the time, celebrities attacking celebrities, regular, anybody attacking anybody. And then what happens is, let's be real, people are fans of people, whether it's for a cause or not. They like them, so they're defending them, and they're becoming
Hmm.
bullies themselves and
Right.
attacking other people and defending people they're fans of. So,
Hmm.
you know, we happen to, I want your opinion, honestly. As an when people are organizations, no matter if they're a charity, an LLC, a cause, a campaign, it doesn't matter. To me, we're all doing the same thing. But there's human beings behind these people that, that run these things, and they have opinions. Now, yes, there's the obvious stating you don't go and, obviously there's certain things that you obviously don't maybe comment on or say or do, of course. And right away it's like, oh, well, you're all about acceptance. Yes, you're about acceptance. That doesn't mean I'm gonna accept if somebody goes and does something outrageous. I should accept them, because we're supposed to be accepting. So
Hmm.
if we happen to agree with some words about, okay, for instance, nobody's name was called out. We agreed with a tweet about Women's International Day, where some words were said about using, not only just using your physical beauty, but inner beauty as well. And we happen to agree with something, and like right away we got like jumped on by a few people. And what's your take on that? Because, are people not allowed to have opinions, and is it shaming? And even when you look at other celebrities, why can't people not have opinions, and it's like people are attacking them for saying that it's shaming?
Well, it's really interesting because I actually just kind of delved into this issue with some articles that talk about that exactly what you're talking about, but in the sphere of like college campuses
Mm.
and in learning communities where, in some ways, stating opinions or discussing hot topic themes or um, opinions has become a really tricky tightrope
Mm-hmm.
because in this age of like microaggressions and being PC, it all of a sudden I think there's a culture of not also being able to discuss or address challenging topics.
Right.
And I think that there was this I saw a play recently and the playwright had this really, really beautiful analogy and I hope that I give it I hope I do it justice. But he was talking about long ago being in a science class, and there was a particular type of particle that was so hard to see under the microscope that the only way you could actually see the particle was by at different sides colliding the particle with other particles, and then you would see the detritus of these collisions that then started to form outline around the unknown particle. And I feel like sometimes you do need these differing opinions to collide against each other in order to see something in its clearest, most visible form. So in terms of
Mm-hmm.
having a safe area to have differing opinions and ideas, I think that that's so integral to truth, to being able to have intelligent and informed conversations. I think when an opinion is then put forth with the intent to hurt someone, then that's where it becomes bullying. But I think it's dangerous to start bullying other people for bullying, and I have seen myself instances where that's become sort of the new way of, I don't know, of showing opinions. I'm not.
No, I get
strange new. Yeah.
No, I get what you're saying. Basically, I like what you're saying, because basically you're saying how I feel. If we're not speaking on and standing up, which we're all always talking about doing, and keeping the conversation going because we want people to speak up and speak out with kindness and with respect and be able to have their opinions, what are we doing if we have to be afraid to say them, regardless if you're an organization or regardless if you're just a person that's just a regular, Twitter profile compared to a business? I mean, yes, there's the obvious, like I said, there's the stating the opinion, and like what you were touching on, like I've always said it, and I make comments about it all the time on our timeline. Please be careful, because you could easily become the bully by trying to defend people. Because you can defend without being a bully, but I've seen so many times where, and I've seen it recently in another situation, and it always has to do, like what you were talking about with television. People get like so, like, oh my god, like aggressive with it, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, but it's supposed to be fun and entertainment. Why are we like wanting to like fight with why are people wanting to fight with each other over it? It's like, and then you find victims that are saying that they're victims, and you really have to look at the picture as a whole. And I said it's very hard to take sides, especially on social media.
I agree, and I think sometimes people, stand behind ideology as a reason to become an aggressor, and I think it's always dangerous when you think that when you hide behind an idea as the right one, without considering the effect of how you express that idea.
Right. And it's just like, rumors too.
Right. And then the flip side is sort of the kind of, I feel like there is a culture of victimhood sometimes where, people agree to be powerless in a situation by calling out other people as aggressors, but there is a way to fight back with the same amount of passion, maybe, and facts, and
poise,
opinions, in a way that can benefit the discussion at large, or the idea at large. I mean, it's tricky territory. It really is, especially in a day and age where so much of how we communicate is in sound bites, and it sort of takes away a lot of the nuance and the bigger picture of, or just even the crux of the argument,
Well, yeah, it's kind of like, no matter what you say, are you going to be seen in a certain light? But you know what? I think a healthy conversation is like a healthy debate. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong about being passionate. But when your passion goes to attacking and cruelty, that's where the line gets crossed. And it's very obvious when it's crossed. And, there's nothing wrong with, like, I see it in fandoms all the time for certain shows. Okay, they're passionate, and you're talking to the writers and you're talking to the directors, and they're indulging in the conversation. But it's when you could see when it shifts. You very well can see when it shifts, and you could also see victims that are playing victims, and then you see them bullying people to the point of torment, where they go offline, or they delete a tweet because they're tormenting them. We've had this situation recently, and people come to us all the time, and it's like sometimes you see the same group of people. And it's like, they're so innocent, but that they're the bullies, and nobody knows it, and their people are so upset, and it's like, well, what are we going to do? Make an announcement? The thing is that, unfortunately, you have to just, you give advice, you tell them what to do, you do what you have to do, you take care of it. But unfortunately, it's like you can't, they so badly want people to know that these people are bullies and no one knows it. And I think that's what bothers them
Yeah.
the most, and what they struggle with is that bullies are getting attention and people don't know that they're bullies because they're playing
Yeah.
victims and innocents, and they're telling these stories while they're bashing. Recently I read, an article about, a television star, and people were bashing his girlfriend, and they're supposed fans of his. How are you a fan of somebody while you're bashing somebody they care about? I see it
Right.
constantly, and you very well can see the line being crossed. So even
Yeah.
though I agree with you, there is a fine line, but it's very obvious when it's like I said, it's very obvious
When
when
it
it's
gets crossed.
crossed. Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
it very much is, and it's sad that so many people get judged, and there's so much. I think the passion is great. Like when you were talking about, when you were younger, and being in television, and you're not having that thick skin maybe yet at that age, but and I love the passion I see, for shows that, like, people, it could change people's lives. Sometimes it could touch people, but it could also have this effect where you see people just like throwing insults at you, and you didn't even do anything. Like, well, who are you? Well, who are you? Well,
Right.
I don't know your name, and
Well,
oh my
my
gosh, you
boyfriend
said
recently
this.
went through this very situation because he played a character on The Walking Dead who was not well liked.
Mhm.
And it was very interesting to watch him navigate being able to converse with fans who their first impression is one of just, hate and derision. And then when they meet him in the actual person, he was able to, give them a very nice fan experience where they were really happy that they were able to meet him in person and make that clear demarcation between, oh, you played this character on TV, but really you're like that. And so, of course, when you're dealing with fictionalized characters on TV, that's a whole other arena of, having to separate fiction
from reality.
Reality, yeah.
Well, that's the problem. I think a lot of people sometimes don't. And I think that's where
Well,
all
and
this
I think
bullying comes
sometimes,
in.
behind a computer screen, sometimes we don't really sit in the reality of there is a real human soul and beating heart behind this, and maybe if this person was standing right in front of me, I would be able to take in their humanity in a much more visceral way, but because they're, just an idea to me, it's a lot easier to attack an idea.
Yeah. Well, and it's true, and I see it, and like I said, we've dealt with this recently, which is why I'm talking about it, because they are very controversial subjects and topics that are going on right now, and what better thing to talk about than get the conversation going and have people talking about it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and it's very sad that people right away jump to you're shaming and you're judging, and it's like, no, we're not. You're not shaming and judging because you happen to feel a certain way, or you happen to use the word agree, and you get attacked for it. So, I mean, it's just, I really think it's more just that you have people that want to bully, and you have people that cry victim, unfortunately. And sometimes you have to be very careful in trying to, decipher which is which, because it can be very hard to do so.
And I think that goes from even down to, the politics of schoolyard bullying right on up to, situations that seem even less black and white. I mean, it's very, it's very tricky. And, when we talk about bullying too, I think, a large portion of bullies are themselves victims of
absolutely
of either abuse or neglect or something, and they just happen to have an outlet for that in a way that happens to be hurtful to other people, unfortunately. And I think that the more that we can, see things in empathic terms that way, sometimes it becomes a little easier to wrap our head around finding a solution that way. No,
absolutely. It's so true. It's, I always say that they're a victim. We work with bullies. We have no problem with it. We work with everybody. We don't exclude anybody. People have asked us that. I said no. If they want help, we're there. But if they want to continue being a bully, obviously there's nothing we could do about that if they're not willing to listen or step forward. But we're there for everybody. We don't exclude, and they are victims. They very much are victims, and we say that all the time. We're like, everybody is a victim in this scenario. It's not one
Yeah.
or the other. They need help. They don't just need punishment. Yes, there should be consequences. I'm not saying there shouldn't, but they also need help, and they also need to be worked with. Otherwise, you're not really, what's the word I'm thinking of? That, like, when you rehabilitate, you're not really helping them rehabilitate if you're just punishing, and
Mm-hmm.
you're not really working with them and helping them to try to figure out or get them to tell you why they're doing it, because there's always a story. There's always a
Yeah.
story. Nobody's born to hate. Nobody's born to be a bully. It's learned behavior. It's coming from
Yeah.
somewhere. And
Well,
you know,
I saw you actually. You put, and it was something that I came across, probably within the same time frame, but it was a beautiful story. And I know not everything is this immediate in terms of showing how far a little love can go, but it's the story of a man who was irate on a subway and who was being angry, and there were a number of passengers on the subway that moved away from him.
mm-hmm.
And this one older woman who was 70 years old came up to him and just grabbed his hand and just held it, because somehow she saw in that moment a man who was hurting and just needed someone to sort of quietly tell them it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of broke my heart. And I know not everyone not everyone who's a bully is in that space to be able to take a hand and hold it.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly, if there's more people willing to offer a hand,
Right.
that can be a huge barrier breaker. Now, to speak to people who are in the throes of being bullied, certainly, when you feel under attack, the last thing you could ever think to do is to hold out your hand
Mm-hmm.
to somebody who is being aggressive and think to ever say, it's okay, I'm here for you. So I think that's a very, very, in some ways, simplified version of all of the, the complexities of what happens in a bullying situation. But I think that it sometimes is helpful to know, and I certainly know that when I came out of my bullying experiences, that after the fact, I did come away with them from those experiences a much more empathic person, and certainly someone who never takes, I'm not somebody who will ever take an impression of someone else as the face value
Mm-hmm.
of another individual. I will always have my own, personal experience with someone to make my own opinion before I allow the opinions of others to shape my worldview of someone's, personality or experience. I think it's always important to make your own judgment instead of just kind of jumping on the bandwagon,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just recently said that too many people jump on bandwagons of rumors and craziness without like really just using their own, personal judgment
their own
and
sound
being
judgment and
just
really
being
taking a step back and assessing
yeah.
something, because I think when you trust your own instincts, that might get you much closer to the truth than if you're one of many people who've gone before you, and maybe it's like a broken telephone, or it can be sometimes.
Yeah, it's like being afraid to be not being part of the popular crowd, and
Yeah.
it's true. And I actually saw and read that story that you actually talked about, and I loved it. It broke my heart too, because it's just one small act of kindness can go further than we actually think. One simple little gesture from a woman to help somebody when everybody else was willing to run away. And I'm not saying, of course you gotta still be careful. I mean, you can't just do like whatever,
and
but.
When you're in the situation, you might not have the fortitude and life experience of a 7-year-old to look at something and see it for what it is. I mean, I think that takes a very special person to be able to do that. But certainly, when there's a moment of solitude, to step back, or even with the help of others,
Mm-hmm.
to realize that there's somebody who's attacking me who's hurting.
Yeah.
And to turn that person into something less scary by having empathy for them can be a very powerful tactic to deal with bullies.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's just like I said, it always goes back to kindness and small acts of kindness, big acts of kindness. No matter, it doesn't matter how big or small, because I think that any little simple thing can change an entire person's life. So I agree with that so much. One final thing I would like to touch base on, and I always ask this to everybody.
Okay.
What's anything special that you would give as words of wisdom or advice, even though you've given some fabulously insightful words already? I don't really know what's left, but I'm sure there's something that you can pull out of your magic hat. And like I said, we are all ages, ranging from kids to adults. So it's just a generic, like, what kind of advice or wisdom can you offer as far as words in support of those and anybody struggling? Anything specific or special that you haven't
I
mentioned?
guess I guess on the flip side, when I made that analogy, holding, bullying holding up a distorted mirror, I think that the best thing that we can do for ourselves is to recognize to be really honest with ourselves about what we most value in ourselves as individuals, and make sure that we find other people to surround us that value the same things. And I think that's probably the best thing we can do for ourselves to create a community of like-minded individuals that really appreciate you for who you are. And I think that's probably one of the best defenses against bullies out there.
Awesome. That's great. Brooke, I've thoroughly enjoyed conversing with you on this topic and the things that we've discussed, and it was genuinely such a nice insight that you an outlook that you had on the causes. And we love that. We love to get everybody's different points of view. So thank you so much again for taking the time out of your, again, hectic schedule to be here.
Well, no, thank you so much for inviting me to be able to talk about these issues, which are very important to me, and I'm really proud and happy to be a voice in an organization that does a lot of good.
And we are happy to have you, and we look forward to working with you further.
Sounds great.
Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed this interview with Brooke, and look for more to come. She'll be doing a PSA, and I'm sure we'll find more things to include our wonderful advocates in as, we grow and we do different things. So everybody remember to be kind and love big.